everyone, welcome back to my channel. Alright, so it's time to see how well we did for January. For those of you new to my channel, we are a rural living family of 5. We are living off one income to pay down our debts. Hubs is paid monthly on or around the 15th of every month. We use the YNAB method without using their online software, and we are very ish about the steps we take to pay off debt. We know that life happens and we want our money to reflect that. Now remember, a budget is defined as an estimate of income and expenses. And since we are paid monthly, it's very hard to estimate every single expense that comes up throughout the course of an entire month. But we do our best by planning ahead and keeping reminders of what's coming up. We also underestimate our budget and overestimate our bills, and this leaves wiggle room within our budget. But because it's hard to predict every single expense, we do keep a buffer in our checking account as well, and we still leave enough room to pay off our debts. This is why I said we are very ish. So our January 2021 paycheck budget was set up with 3 goals in mind. 1, to keep our grocery budget within budget. 2, to eat out 2 times or less. And 3, to finish paying off our city card and move on to the next debt. I used the review pages of my budgeting workbook to see how well we did keeping with these goals and our budget. The workbook I'm using is a newer version of a budgeting workbook I have in my Etsy shop. I have not uploaded this newer version yet. There's still some things I would like to modify to it. So rather than starting with income, because some of our income throughout this month actually comes from our sinking funds, I start by adding up the bills for the pay month. Most of our bills were spot on for the month. A few notable things were: 1, our car payment wound up having a late fee added on because the mail was so slowed down that they received the payment 2 weeks late. After numerous headaches later and learning that this is one bank added to a handful of banks we will never do business with again, we were able to get our car payment as an online banking payment. 2, we took part of our second federal stimulus we received in January and used it to pay down city. It wasn't enough to completely pay it off like I wanted to this month, but it was enough to leave us with one more payment before the balance was back at 0. And 3, I mentioned this in the February budget with me, but our propane delivery, which I thought we would have had for this month, wound up being late. So there is no propane bill within this paycheck. There is for February's paycheck though. So overall, our bills category ended up being $4,804.09. This is a little higher than what we budgeted for because we added money to our city payment. So after adding up the bills, I went through our expense tracker and added up our spending category and transferred the amounts to the appropriate spots on the paycheck budget sheet. If this category was spending from a sinking fund, I put the appropriate amount in the income section as well. For example, this pay month, we spent $39.18 in medical expenses. These are copays and prescription expenses we had throughout the pay month. Previously, we used to transfer the money right after each transaction with notes on what the money was for within each transaction, so it wasn't anything that I needed to remember later. But last year, our bank has changed the number of times per month we can withdraw from our savings account, making my previous method quite moot. So what we do now, since we leave a buffer in our checking account, is we transfer the money in one lump sum after reviewing our budget, noting it in the transfer as January 15th to February 14th spent. This way I'm still sticking to their new number of transfers that we can make, and if I really want to know what was spent on prescriptions and what was spent on copays, I have the breakdowns in this budget workbook. You will see later that there is one category I forgot to put on this workbook page, even though I keep reviewing and checking, and it was the school category. O needed some supplies for an atom project he had to complete for science, and we bought the supplies. And even though I kept checking back at our expense tracker, for some reason it just wasn't clicking that I forgot it. I do go back later and fix it though. For our cash envelope categories, it was split between overspent and underspent. We overspent on our food category by $45, so I didn't keep to that goal either. Feeding 2 teenage boys and a growing girl among rising food costs is a struggle bus that I am most definitely on. However, I'm not going to fret about overspending in these categories for a few reasons. 1, I intentionally leave a large buffer in our bills. And 2, $45 is very close to what I budgeted. It's not like we spent nearly $900 and budgeted $75. And yes, that has happened before. This goes back to utilizing YNAB. We leave room in our budget for what matters most. And to me, growing up how I did, making sure there is food in the house is what matters to me. We still pay down debt because that is a priority for us too, but we recognize that it is not a race, that there are other priorities at hand. Debit expenses, fuel, we spent just under $160. We did a bit of running around this pay month, and it wasn't as much as we normally do. There were also less therapy sessions than I had anticipated there would be when I set up this budget. I thought my daughter would still be going weekly, but she ended up switching to a bi-weekly schedule and is now in line with my middle's schedule. And our oldest is on an offset bi-weekly schedule. While this may be confusing, for what they are in therapy for, it makes sense. This is money that stays in our checking account and is paid out when the bill arrives. Since the start of quarantines nearly a year ago, they've been billing us rather than taking co-pays the few times we are in their office. It just makes it easier between in-person and sessions and telehealth sessions. Finally, in our debit expenses, I forgot about the second half of the dance costume deposit for my daughter. It was due just before our March paycheck, and rather than waiting until then, I decided to just pay it out of this paycheck. There will undoubtedly be other expenses that will come up, and I would rather pay this now than stressing over this and those other unexpected expenses. While going through the review pages, I noted that we spent money on tax software this year. It was one of our miscellaneous Amazon purchases, and that I would need to remember that for next year as well. So I added it to our year at a glance page. This way, when I'm setting up our 2022 budget workbook, I'll see that and hopefully remember to put it in our budget. I noted that our grocery budget was close to what we had estimated, and we noticed that our downfall this month was mainly the frozen finds of the week at Aldi's. It was very nice to reheat some toasted ravioli or mac and cheese bites, but when we're feeding our size family, it does get a bit pricey. But we did stick to eating out only 2 times this month, so it's a give and a take. To help in the upcoming months, I want to monthly meal plan some more again. We had actually stopped doing this about a year ago when we were taking things as it was with just what was actually in stock and available. I know that there are still shortages of supplies, but a monthly meal plan can be very flexible, and it is a great way to help save money on our grocery bill. And finally, I need to start thinking about our back-to-school sinking fund and start tracking our pool expenses. There is still way too much snow on the ground outside, and it has been a constant barrage of snowstorms since before Christmas in my area. But spring is quickly coming, and I know that we will need to better track our expenses on pool shock and cleaner and so on and so forth. When all is said and done, after I remembered to include the school spending category for this pay month, there was $75.02 left over in our budget from this month. Rather than making an additional payment to Citi, I am just going to leave that in our checking account for now. Hubs has a filling that is being done next week, and I don't know what our out-of-pocket costs on that are going to be, since this is the first time someone has needed a filling on our current dental insurance. Hubs' employer switched to this insurance in 2018, so I think that's a really good run for us. So that's it for this video. What were some budgeting challenges you had over the last month? And what are some goals that you set for yourself and achieved or didn't achieve? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of my budgeting and planning videos, please click that subscribe button. I've got a February budget check-in coming soon. I hope you all are staying healthy and staying warm. Please wear a mask, and until next time, bye.